The Last of Us Episode 3 happened last night, and it's going exactly how you would expect a project with Neil Druckmann or Neil Cuckman involved. Now, there's a couple of different ways that I want to approach this because Episode 3 in its own right, I thought was somewhat entertaining. But when you actually look at the people behind it and you look at the agenda that they're trying to push, then you understand that this is not about just telling a story that's going to benefit the overall story. This is about Neil Cuckman pushing the agenda that he couldn't push when he originally made The Last of Us because it wasn't universally acceptable like it is now. And so back then, he left subtle hints as to the relationship between Bill and Frank because he couldn't go full-blown Brokeback Mountain like he did in this episode. But then you have to ask yourself, why did he do it in this episode, and how did this episode benefit the overall story? So again, there's two different ways to look at this. Did I think that they did a good job telling the story in this episode? Sure. It was fine. I mean, for an isolated individual story, that's fine. But why are you telling and using an entire episode to tell this story about two gay characters? Would this episode have made any sense if this was about two straight characters that had nothing to do with the overall story? It wouldn't even have been told because this was done so Neil Cuckman and Naughty Dog can push their bullshit agenda. Now, I know that a lot of people that are going to see me reacting to this and see the headline are going to say, oh, Jeremy's just intimidated by gay characters, yada, yada, yada. It's so stupid because these people don't have a working brain because they think that everything is something to be fake offended over. Every single thing that somebody has, every opinion, whatever. But now you see the mainstream using this episode. And now this is a victory for all gamers, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Bill and Frank being hinted at, or Bill being hinted at as being a gay character in the original Last of Us, that didn't save lives. But this episode, this is the most important episode in the history of humanity, ladies and gentlemen. You see NBC News right here. HBO's The Last of Us adaptation is a milestone for LGBTQ gamers. Where's the IA and the plus? They didn't get involved in this one. This wasn't a milestone for them. LGBTQ gamers who spoke with NBC News said the third episode of the series, focusing on queer romance, gave them hope for the future of video games. This is nonsense. Now, this is why this episode existed. So again, you can look at this episode and think it was fine and entertaining, and I do appreciate like certain perspectives you get from the apocalypse and that feel or whatever. But when you look at why did this episode actually happen, it happened so that Neil Cuckman can push his bullshit. That's all this happened for. Because again, if you take that story, this story of The Last of Us, and you have this random thing that was hinted at in the original Last of Us, a relationship between a man and a woman, would you have gotten a full episode out of that? No, because it doesn't complement the story at all. That's why so many people are frustrated with all of this, because Neil Cuckman continuing to push his bullshit agenda. Now, it gets better for The Last of Us because now there are hints. I guess there's reports that we're going to get The Last of Us Season 2. The Last of Us Season 2 will cover the events of The Last of Us Part 2. So that means we're going to get Big Abby Pump is your hookup, holla if you hear me. And that means that Joel, Pedro Pascal, I guess is going to get a golf club to the face. I really hope they cast Scott Steiner. I've seen some people go, all the bigots are going to be upset now because they're actually adapting the game. No, I'm actually happy about this. I really, really hope that they cast Scott Steiner in this role as Abby, and I would love to see Scott Steiner just put a golf club right to Pedro Pascal's Joel's head. That would be fantastic, because I don't have a vested interest in this other than to tell you exactly what I think. I watched the first episode and I liked it, and I made a video and I point blank said, hey, I was wrong based on this first episode. The second episode, people liked the second episode. And now here we are at the third episode. I don't know what the overall consensus is. I think generally speaking, if you're actually just looking at this episode as an individual story, I think it's fine. But when you're looking at the bigger picture as to why did this even happen, then it's clear to see that this was Neil Cuckman just doing what he couldn't do back then, because it's not about breaking down barriers. It's not about giving proper representation. It's about these weirdos were never brave enough to do it when it wasn't unpopular, but now that it's trendy, now they're going to jump on the bandwagon because we're dealing with cowards. People like Naughty Dog and Neil Druckmann are cowards. So we'll see how this all plays out moving forward, but you're going to see more articles like this, and this is the bigger problem with it, and this is exactly why it happens, so that agenda can be pushed, and then articles from the mainstream can happen like this, and then you can call everyone a bigot that has any criticism whatsoever. You guys have a great day. Thank you very much for checking out this video, and we will talk to you later.